शतारिणे जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवास आदि गौर भक्तवृंद हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे ओम अज्ञानतिमिरन्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरोन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरुवे नमः नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत् नष्टप्रायेषु अभद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भगवतीरुत्तमश्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्टिकी. Hare Krishna, dear devotees. We continue to read from the seventh canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. And today we are reading the auspicious day of Dwadashi. We're reading from the 10th chapter, entitled Prahlad, the best among exalted devotees. We are reading from text 18, and I believe we have to do 18 and 19 today. So we'll start with 18. Sri Bhagavan Vacha Disaptabhihi Pita Putah Pitrubhihi Savate Nagha Yat Sadhosya Kule Jato Bhavan Vai Kulapavanaha Trisaptavihi Pita Putah Pitrubhi Sahate Nagha Yat Sadhosya Kule Jato Bhavan Vai Kulapavanaha Trisaptavihi Pita Putah Pitrubhi Sahate Nagha Yat Sadhosya Kule Jato Bhavan Vai Kulapavanaha. Devotees can chant.
Shri Bhagavan Vacha Shri Saptabhi Pita Puta Pitribhi Sahate Naga Yat Sadho Syakule Jato Bhavanvai Kurapavanaha.
Shri Bhagavanu Vacham Shri Saptapi Pita Putta Pitribi Sahate Naga Yat Sadosya Kule Chato Bhavan Vaikula Pavanaha.
Anyone else would like to chant? Okay. I think we will chant 19 as well. The purports are shorter, so we'll chant 19 right now. Then we can read the translations and purports together. Yatra yatra cha madbhaktaha prashantaha samadarshinaha sadhava samudacharas te puyante pikitakaha yatra yatra cha madbhaktaha prashantaha samadarshinaha sadhava samudacharas te puyante pikitakaha yatra yatra cha madbhaktaha prashanta samadarshinaha sadhava samudacharas te puyante pikikataha. Devotees can chant.
Yatra Yatra Chamad Bhakta Prashanta Samadashinaha Sarva Samudacharas Te Puyante Piki Kataha.
Yatra Yatra Chamad Bhakta Prashanta Samadarshina Sadhava Samudacharas Te Puyante Piki Kataha.
So I'll read the word for word synonyms for the first verse, 18th. Sri Bhagavan Uvacha, the Supreme Personality of Godhead said, Tri Saptabhihi, 7 multiplied by 3, That is to say 21. Pita, father. Pritibihi, Puta, purified. Pritibihi, with your forefathers. Saha, all together. Te, your. Anagha, O most sinless personality, Prahlad Maharaj. Yet, because. Sadho, a great saintly person. Asya, of this person. Kule, in the dynasty. Jataha, took birth. Bhavan, you. Why, indeed. Kulapavanaha, the purifier of the whole dynasty. Translation by Srila Prabhupada. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, My dear Prahlad, O most pure, O great saintly person, your father has been purified, along with 21 forefathers in your family. Because you were born in this family, the entire dynasty has been purified. And purport by Srila Prabhupada. The word Tri Saptabihi means 7 multiplied by 3. In one's family, one can count back 4 or 5 generations to one's great grandfather or even one's great grandfather's father. But since the Lord mentions 21 forefathers, this indicates that the benediction expands to other families also. Before the present family in which one has taken birth, one must have been born in other families. Thus, when a Vaishnava takes birth in a family, by the grace of the Lord, he purifies not only that family, but also the families of his previous births. I'll read the translation once again. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, My dear Prahlad, O most pure, O great saintly person, your father has been purified, along with 21 forefathers in your family. Because you were born in this family, the entire dynasty has been purified. So this was in response to the request by Srila Prahlad Maharaj that if you insist on me getting a benediction, please give me the benediction that my father be liberated. I know that he's already been liberated because he's been touched by you. He's been touched by your lotus hands. And simply by seeing you, people get liberated, let alone being touched by you. So I'm sure he's liberated, but I still ask on behalf of my father. Whatever offenses he has committed, please forgive those offenses and please purify him, please liberate him. That was a request, and this is in response to that request. So a few things come out in this particular verse. One is the character of Prahlad Maharaj, which has been discussed throughout this chapter and throughout this canto pretty much, right? This whole chapter is entitled Prahlad, the best among exalted devotees. So there are many exalted devotees, and Srila Prahlad Maharaj is being called the best among exalted devotees. And so, and I've said this a couple times before as well, that the unique characteristic of the pastime that's described in the Srimad Bhagavatam compared to the Narsingha Puran or the Padma Puran or the Vishnu Puran is that in the Srimad Bhagavatam, the emphasis is given on the character and the personality and the activities of Prahlad Maharaj. Of course, Lord Nrsingadev is the hero of this whole story. He comes and saves the day, and his most wonderful form is for there everybody to see. Stambhe Savayam Naburgam Namanisham. That's what Hiranyakashipu sees. That from this pillar comes this Adbhuta Rupam, this most astounding form, which is neither man nor animal. So Nrsimha is half man, half lion. This most astonishing form that's never before seen comes out of the pillar. So all that is the glory of Lord Nrsingadev, which is obviously mentioned in this chapter, in this canto. But the bulk of the canto is dedicated to discussing the character of Prahlad Maharaj. And here, Lord Nrsingadev is promising Prahlad Maharaj that just because you were born in this family, because you're a great devotee of the Lord, a great saintly person like you, your father has been purified. And not just your father, but 21 forefathers, 21 generations above. Srila Prabhupada very astutely mentions in the purport that most of us, I mean, unless you're from some unique family where they can trace back 20, 30 generations back. Most of us can probably name our grandfather or great grandfather, or maybe 1 or 2 generations above that, if you're lucky, right? So we can trace back to 4 generations, 5 generations. I think very few people can actually trace back 21 generations. And even if they would somehow know their name, they would very unlikely know anything more about those persons, right? Even 4, 5, 6 generations back, you wouldn't really know much about the person in terms of how they lived or what they were thinking or how they were acting, were they pious or not pious. Those things are very rare for people to know. But here, Lord Nrsimhadev gives us the assurance that regardless of what their position was, they are purified. Now, it's interesting to understand or analyze why Srila Prahlad Maharaj was asking for this benediction to purify his father. Of course, that very clearly shows the character of Prahlad Maharaj in terms of his compassion. A Vaishnava is always compassionate. So you have this trait. But there's also another reason from a Shastric standpoint, from a Vedic culture standpoint, from a Vaishnava culture standpoint, why this is important. And that's because of this idea of gratitude, right? So one cannot become a Krishna conscious devotee unless you have gratitude in your heart. And there are 2 specific words in Sanskrit for explaining this point. One is called kritagya, and the other is kritagna. So krita means something that has been done. And so usually, typically, you understand kritagyata to be gratitude. When someone, if you go to the Sanskrit dictionary and look up the word kritagyata, the meaning is gratitude or being thankful. But if you really break the word down and what actually the component words are, krita means something that has been done. And gya is a root word for jnana as well, knowledge. So kritagya literally means to have memory or knowledge or acknowledgement of something that has been done for you. So when something is done for us, or somebody gives us something or does something for us, then having that remembrance, smarana, remembrance of that specific thing, knowing it, acknowledging it, is kritagyata, kritagya. So you cannot. This is considered one of the fundamental qualities of trying to become a devotee, where we have kritagyata or gratitude for everything that we've received to get us to this point. Of course, the greatest gratitude is given to our spiritual master, who brings us to the lotus feet of Lord Sri Krishna. And then the Siksha Gurus. Our Sampradaya, we consider the Shiksha Guru Sampradaya, where Shiksha is given prominence. And so this idea of Kritagyata doesn't end there. It expands to everyone who has given anything to us to get us to the point in life where we are practicing Krishna consciousness. And so this Kritagyata becomes a very, very critical quality that a devotee has to exhibit. The opposite of that is Kritagna. Gna literally means to disregard, sometimes even to kill. Right? The Pashugna, this word comes in the words of the Srimad Bhagavatam as well. That only a Pashugna, only a person who's killer of his own soul or killer of animals will not appreciate the Supreme Personality of God. Right in the beginning of the 10th canto, this comes. Nivruta Tarshay Rupagiyamana. That in that verse, this Pashugna comes. The one who's killer of the animals or killer of the soul is the only person who doesn't appreciate the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So this Kritagna means one who disregards whatever has been done for him. And this point is that there are so many personalities that give us what we have in terms of our abilities, our ability to even perform Krishna consciousness. In fact, our bodies with which we perform our sadhana, right? We go to holy places, we perform seva, we even wash parts. This body is given to us by our parents. So in the Vedic system, parents are considered the first guru, because even the guru is not just a person who is a diksha guru. That's why in the Chaitanya Charitamrita also, the first verse is Vande Gurun Isha Bhaktan. So the first words are Vande Gurun. Vande Guru is singular. Vande Gurun is plural. So the first verse in the Chaitanya Charitamrita acknowledges there are many gurus, the many spiritual man. Of course, you have one Diksha Guru who is the most worshipable. And even in the teachings of uh, of Kapiladev to Mother Devabhuti, when he explains the gradations of living entities, right from like the four-legged to two-legged, and then he gradually, Kapiladev gets to the point of the highest, most respectable person is the Brahmana, and the Brahmana who can explain Shastra and all of that. And finally he says the ultimate, most respectable person is the Diksha Guru, the one who gives you the connection with the Parampara, the spiritual master. So of course that is undeniable. But there are other individuals also who give us shiksha throughout our process. So the point of that verse in the Chaitanya Charitamrita is Vande Gurun, which is there are many spiritual masters, many gurus, meaning that there's a Diksha Guru and many Siksha Gurus. So the parents are considered the first Guru because the mother keeps us in her womb for more than 9 months and nourishes her and undergoes the pain of labor to give birth to our body. And with this body is what we're doing all this service. We're chanting the holy name with the tongue, which is part of the body, and so on. So our gratitude has to be to our parents from that very beginning, even if and sometimes the parents may not actually connect us with Krishna, but the fact that they gave us a body with which we can approach a guru, speak with the guru, and connect with the guru, that also deserves our gratitude. And of course, there are so many different debts. So this is spoken about in the Shastra. We have debts to our parents, we have debts to society, we have debts to uh, rishis, the great sages of the past who have given us wisdom that's passed down, with which we know so many things. Then there's debts to demigods, Deva. There's a Pitruran, Matruran, this mother and father, um, Rishiran, which is a debt to rishis. There's Devaran, rishis to various the debts to various demigods. Like we get sunlight, we get air, we get water. So Surya, Chandra, Vayu, Agni. So all these devatas, they have a role to play in giving us so many things, right? So although we all understand that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is a source, the fountainhead, right? So if you look at the Shastric point that Krishna says in the Gita also that those who worship the demigods are less intelligent. So the point is unmistakable that we cannot consider the demigods as the supreme lord and go to them for material benefits. Those who go into demigods for material benefits are clearly are not intelligent because they don't understand where the source is and what is the duty of our life. But Krishna never says that we should be ungrateful to these intermediaries who are supplying us so many things. I mean, simple example is that even if uh, someone gives you a bouquet of flowers, right? And they go to they purchase it online. They can do that nowadays. You purchase it online, and a delivery person comes and gives it to you. When you get that from the delivery person, you thank the delivery person. Oh, thank you very much. Now, that delivery person is just doing his job. He's getting paid by the flower company or the delivery company, and the person is just delivering whatever somebody else has ordered. So the person who ordered the flowers for you is the one who should be thanked. So of course, we will definitely thank that person that they made the effort to pay the money and so on to get you a bouquet of flowers. But even the delivery person who had no role in it other than just he doesn't even know who you are, but just plays the role of bringing the bouquet of flowers to you, also gets your gratitude. That is this common courtesy. It is not. I mean, thanking the person who gives you the bouquet of flowers is not a sign of very high culture. It's just a common courtesy. Anybody would do that. So similarly, when all these devatas are agents of the Lord and make us and facilitate our ability to live in this world and perform our sadhana, perform our bhakti, they also deserve our gratitude. They don't deserve our disrespect. They deserve our gratitude. And Srila Prabhupada is very clear on this point. It's not like he said we should worship the demigods. No, that does not mean worshiping the demigods. But it doesn't mean that we are disrespectful or ungrateful to these empowered personalities. Srila Prabhupada would say that a Vaishnava is not even unkind to an ant. What to speak about empowered representatives of the Lord who are giving us so many facilities. So the point is that there are so many debts that we have in society to so many personalities who make our life possible by which we can perform sadhana. And the Srimad Bhagavatam in the 11th canto, 5th chapter, when Narada is speaking to Vasudev, he says this very famous word, Srila Prabhupada would quote it all the time, that Devarshi bhutaptanunam putranam na kinkaro nayam runicha rajan sarvatmana aya sharanam sharanyam gato mukundam parihritya kartum, which means, O king, one has given up all material duties and taken full shelter of the lotus feet of Mukunda, who offers shelters to all, is not indebted to the demigods, great sages, ordinary living beings, relatives, friends, mankind, or even one's forefathers who have passed away. Since all such classes of living entities are part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, one who has surrendered to the Lord's service has no need to serve such persons separately. So when we become a devotee of the Lord, all these debts are settled. But the key point in this verse also is that these debts exist. And unless we become a pure devotee of the Lord, we cannot ignore these debts. So Srila Prahlad Maharaj, understanding this point, understanding that we have debts to various personalities who make our life possible, was grateful to Hiranyakashipu to give him this body with which he could perform devotional service, which is why he was specifically asking for his father to be purified. Because if I've done something good, please use some of my credits or all my credits to purify and liberate my father. And that is the point that is brought out by the acharyas in terms of the mood and the personality of Prahlad Maharaj, in terms of how he was still very grateful for whatever little he had received from Hiranyakashipu. At some point, Hiranyakashipu had exhibited his affection for Prahlad Maharaj. It's not like the time he was born, he hated him. No, he was very affectionate. In the early chapters of this canto, we saw how Hiranyakashipu was so affectionate towards his son. And so he still had gratitude for that. He raised him to a point of 5 years old, and he gave him all the things that he thought was the best for him. Now, it might not be the best for him in the real sense, because Hiranyakashipu wanted to make him a materialist, but even in that sense, he gave him something that Hiranyakashipu thought was the best for his son, even though it was not. So that idea of giving something that you consider the best for that person is also a positive thought that Srila Prahlad Maharaj appreciated and had gratitude for. So anyway, that was the point from this particular verse that I wanted to point out. And then on the next verse we were reading, this Yatra Yatra Chamadbhakta Prashanta Samudarshinaha Sadava Samudachara Ste Puyantepi Kikataha. Kikataha means any place that's degraded. So Yatra Yatra, wherever and whenever. Cha, also Madbhaktaha, my devotees. Prashantaha, extremely peaceful. Shanta means peaceful. Prashanta means extremely peaceful. Samadarshinaha, equipoised. Right? So this verse comes in the fifth chapter of the Gita as well. This specific word, right? That Vidya Vinaya Sampane Brahmane Gavihastini Shuni Chaiva Shvapakesha Pandita Samadarshina. The Samadarshina means one who has equal vision. Srila Prabhupada translates that equipoised. The literal meaning is one who has equal vision. Samadarshina. Darshana means to see. When you take darshan of the Lord, or when you take darshan of our spiritual master, it means to have audience. And so darshana literally means to see, and sama means equal. Sadavaha, decorated with good qualities. Samudacharaha, equally magnanimous. Udara means one who's broad-minded. This verse is there in the second canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, right? The word one who has no desires, or akama sarvakamo va moksha kama udaradhi. Udara means broad. Udaradhi means broad-minded. broad-minded intelligence. So Sama udara means one who's very, very equally magnanimous. Sama means equal. So some people may be very magnanimous to people of their own uh, race, or people of their own family, or people of their own country, or whatever, right? So they have all these people are magnanimous, but they're only magnanimous to certain classes. But Prahlad Maharaj was equally magnanimous to everyone. And puyante means to be purified. Api, even. Ki kataha, a degraded country or inhabitants of such a place. So the translation by Srila Prabhupada. Whenever and wherever there are peaceful, equipoised devotees who are well behaved and decorated with all good qualities, that place and the dynasties there, even if condemned, are purified. Srila Prabhupada gives a one-line purport. He says, whenever exalted devotees, so wherever exalted devotees stay, not only they, but their dynasties, but the entire country is purified. Entire country is purified. So, yeah, so we are so fortunate that we live in the United States of America, where Srila Prabhupada came and stayed for many years. And he came to our Gita Nagari farm, and he spent time there as well. So we certainly very blessed. And just by being there, we become purified, is what essentially Srila Prabhupada is conveying in this purport, short purport. And it's a very nice verse in the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, in the 13th chapter. This is when, after the battle of Kurukshetra is over, Vidura comes back to Hastinapur, and he is welcomed by all the residents of Hastinapur, headed by Yudhishthira Maharaj. And there, everyone is, and the whole section is so beautiful, where everybody is so relieved, and like there's monsoon or rains after a long period of parched hot weather, and there's rains, it becomes very pleasing and cooling. And everybody was so relieved and pleased to see Vidura, and they were asking him for his welfare. And then the very beautiful point that Yudhishthira Maharaj makes, and this is the 10th verse, 13th chapter, first canto. It says, Bhavad Bhagavata Tirtha Bhuta Swayam Vibho Tirthi Kurvanti Tirthani Swantastena Gada Bhrata. O my Lord, devotees like your good self are verily holy places personified. Because you carry the personality of God within your heart, you turn all places into places of pilgrimage. So when pure devotees of the Lord go anywhere, they purify those places of pilgrimage. And I'll end with one point from Chaitanya Charitamrita, which always struck me as such a wonderful section of the Chaitanya Charitamrita. This is when, before the Rath Yatra of Puri, which is coming up in a few weeks in Jagannath Puri. And of course, now we have the good fortune of it being live streamed on YouTube and so on. So I definitely, every time there's Rath Yatra, I definitely spend a number of hours just watching. If you're not able to go there personally, at least you can watch on TV now, or your computer, the Rath Yatra of the Lord. So this is when Lord Chaitanya is not in Puri. He is in his South India Yatra. And Maharaj Pitarudra, he asks Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya that I would like to meet Lord Chaitanya. So Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya says, yes, surely we can arrange that. But right now, Lord Chaitanya is not here. He's gone on a Tirtha Yatra, or a pilgrimage to South India. Now, Maharaj Pitarudra is very, very puzzled. He says, well, Jagannath Puri is the holiest of all holy places. Purushottam Kshetra. Right? So who leaves Purushottam Kshetra to go on pilgrimage somewhere else? Why would somebody leave the holiest of all holy places and go somewhere else for pilgrimage? And so at that point, Sarvabhaumata answers that. He says that Lord Chaitanya is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He is Swatantra. Ishwarera Swatantra Ichha. He says he's completely independent. And whatever he does, wherever he goes, he makes those places of pilgrimage. So wherever his feet touch, whichever place his feet touches, that place becomes a place of pilgrimage. So wherever Lord Chaitanya went in his yatra, all those places became equally purified as places of pilgrimage. That was the analogy I just came to my mind. That here, Lord Nrsingadev is saying, wherever equipoised and peaceful devotees who are well behaved, and decorated with all good qualities, in that place, the dynasties and even if the places are condemned are purified. So, as followers of Srila Prabhupada and followers of Lord Chaitanya, it becomes a responsibility. It becomes a responsibility to become peaceful, equipoised, well behaved, and decorated with all good qualities. So we should aspire for that, so that we can purify ourselves and purify the general place as well. So only when people see us as cultured, well behaved personalities, do they become inspired to become devotees. People in general, right? Whether they're favorable to devotees or unfavorable or whatever, right? In the community, wherever, if they see us as ourselves not very organized, not very peaceful, not very well behaved, then their inclination to even hear the message of Lord Shri Krishna, hear the message of of Lord Chaitanya, and specifically hear the message of Srila Prabhupada is just diminished. So by our actions, if our actions are not to the highest standard, then we're actually doing a great disservice to Srila Prabhupada. Where because we're associated with this movement, people associate our bad behavior with this movement. And therefore their inclination to even read Srila Prabhupada's books or even hear the message of Srila Prabhupada goes away. So this great responsibility that we have to conduct ourselves in such a way that people feel that, oh, this person is from this movement and they're behaving this way. So there must be something wonderful that I must at least understand what this movement is, what Srila Prabhupada said. And that is our greatest service. Right? So we may not all be uh, great preachers or having hundreds of or thousands of people listening to us speak, but whatever little sphere of influence we have, if we conduct ourselves in such a way, then that is the greatest service of Srila Prabhupada. So anyway, these two verses, there could be a lot more that can be said, but I'll stop here and see if there are any questions or comments. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
I want to thank you for a nice class. I got a lot out of that, and I'm really grateful. Yeah, I'm still digesting your words. There's a lot to unpack there. Very valuable points. Um, you reminded me of something that I heard from Srila Prabhupada in connection with the responsibility that we have to properly represent the Guru Parampara, our spiritual master, and Lord Chaitanya's movement. At the Kumbh Mela, Srila Prabhupada was warning us to be on our best behavior for several reasons. One of the points that he made was that there were all kinds of people present. This was on the occasion of the the Mahakumbh Mela. And so all kinds of personalities were there, and Srila Prabhupada was warning us that, you won't know who you're interacting with necessarily. They may look like ordinary people, but there are very great personalities present who look like ordinary people, but you cannot understand who and what they are. In some cases, they are hundreds of years old, but they will look like they're 25 years old. So you should be very careful in your dealings, always very respectful. And then, very importantly, he said that people in general, particularly in India, where um, the culture of spiritual life is still uh, existing to a greater extent than you find elsewhere in the world, and particularly at the Kumbh Mela, where everyone is particularly conscious of issues of um, advancement in spiritual life or even material life. But um, he said that people will judge your guru based upon what they see in you, that they expect that you will be a product of the guru. And so the quality that they see in you, they expect will reflect the quality of the spiritual master. And so you want to be certain that you are properly representing your spiritual master. At that time, of course, we were all disciples of Srila Prabhupada. Um, Srila Prabhupada was the only uh, spiritual master for all of ISKCON. And so it was a very sobering instruction that we have to try to put our best foot forward and be sure that we are representing all of the best of what we have come to understand from Srila Prabhupada. And it's not something that you can just you can't fake it, you can't pretend, you can't just suddenly behave yourself very nicely if you haven't cultivated the consciousness underlying that behavior from the get-go. It evolves over a long period of time. Um, Srila Prabhupada did his best to train his disciples, but we were not always the best students. The process takes time, but you have to be, very receptive to the message, and you have to apply the instructions, and then the results will manifest in you, and that will be visible to others. So it was very sobering for us to hear these instructions, and helped us to understand the gravity of what we are supposed to be doing every day, all day, regardless of where we are, what the circumstances are. That the practice of Krishna consciousness under the direction of our spiritual master is it's a responsibility. We have to take it very seriously and do it very nicely, because how we perform will reflect on our spiritual master and the Guru Parampara, and ultimately Krishna. If we are in any way badly behaved or uncultured, that creates a very bad impression. And when people see that, they are hurt by that. Their attitude is spoiled. Their respect for the devotees and our spiritual lineage is reduced, and So those individuals are cut off from the benefit that accrues to one who appreciates the value of the previous acharyas and all that they have done. We have to be mindful of the fact that we are representatives. We're not just independent sadhakas, individuals trying to cultivate spiritual life for ourselves. We have a broader responsibility. We have to represent the entire Guru Parampara nicely, because other people will be affected by that. If we do a good job, other people will benefit. And there's no limit to the extent to which they can benefit, but we can hurt them as well if we do a bad job. So it's a huge responsibility. I think about it often because I'm a really poor example of what a disciple should be. It's a heavy responsibility to be a disciple of Srila Prabhupada. Um, in presently in ISKCON, there are so many younger devotees, and naturally they're going to look to more senior devotees to see, what is the standard, what is acceptable, what is not acceptable, and what are the results of practicing Krishna consciousness. What happens to someone who's been practicing for many decades? What kind of a character is manifest in them? So it's a heavy responsibility. It weighs heavily on me anyway. I feel woefully inadequate. I feel like a very bad example, and so I a lot of my effort in every day is directed towards trying to become a good representative. And it's a struggle. I resist, the responsibility. I'm just a reformed or a reforming hippie, and I don't really want any responsibility, but I have so much responsibility, and I have to take it seriously. So anyway, I appreciate the reminder. It's very important for everyone. Thank you again, Prabhu, for a very nice class. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna. Anything else, or we can wrap?
Yes. Haribo and Vilas Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you for your class. I always like your classes. The question I was wondering about is, it's kind of technical, but 21 generations of forefathers. And Prahlad's forefathers seem to only go back 4 generations, back to Brahma. Kashyapa and Diti were his grandparents. Marichi was the great-grandparent, and then Lord Brahma. So how can we understand this point about the 21 generations in reference to Prahlad Maharaj?
Yeah, so the beauty of our Vedic system is explained with that yugas are cycles, right? And as we know from Chaitanya Charitamrita as well, there's not just one Brahma. And then Brahma has a certain lifespan, and then he dies, and then there's another Brahma. So of course, there's this understanding that, well, in this, like for instance, we have a father and mother in this lifetime, but then in prior lifetimes also we had parents who are different from our current family lineage. So similarly, in the previous kalpa also, we were living entities, and we had parents and so on. So of course, this is unlimited. So if you unpack it that way, it becomes unlimited. And Srila Prabhupada very kindly also explains this in the purport that This indicates that the benediction expands to other families also. Before the present family in which one takes birth, one must have been born in other families as well. So this expands. So that is one way to understand. The other way to understand is also that this is the Shastric points are essentially made for all time to come, for all circumstances. They are not limited specifically. So Lord Nrsingadev is giving this point as a general point that if a person becomes a pure devotee, right, the entire dynasty becomes purified, right? And so we certainly can think about 21 forefathers ahead of us in terms of conceptually. So this is a general point that's made that it's applicable for all time to come. So if you just look at it from the perspective of Prahlad Maharaj, you can say, well, okay, so he was the son of Hiranyakashipu, and then Hiranyakashipu was the son of Nasuditi and Kashyapa and so on. So you can then Brahma. So it ends there. Right? Brahma was born from Garbhodaksha Vishnu. So where are the 21 forefathers? So there's a logical question to ask. But the point is more of a general point that if you become a devotee of the Lord, then the debts that you have to your forefathers, etc., don't have to be separately nullified. They become nullified just because you become a devotee of the Lord. And 21 forefathers of a devotee of the Lord become purified. So that's a general point. The specific context of Prahlad thinking that there are 21 generations is more the contextual point, but the actual point is that applies to all times in the future is that when a person becomes a pure devotee of the Lord, his becoming a devotee purifies 21 generations above him. That's how I typically would explain this point he was explaining. Not necessarily that it specifically applies to Prahlad and we have to somehow trace out 21 generations of Prahlad. Hopefully that's helpful, Prabhu.
Yes, yes, and it kind of spurred
Shastra about how things work. Sorry, I interrupted you.
No, thank you. That was a great answer. That helps. But it also made me wonder about two things. What does it actually mean, purifying 21 generations? And then also, because I'm thinking about, okay, my recent generations, going back to my great grandfather and so on. But also, there's some family members, like my grandfather on one side was the youngest of 25 children from the same mother. So many branches branched off from there. So it seems like it would be almost like a three-dimensional chakra of so many people connected, so many souls connected to the lineage. How does that, how do you conceptualize that?
Yeah, so the point really is, these are Falashrutis, right? So pretty much every pastime or every section of the Srimad Bhagavatam has a Falashruti, meaning that, like, if you hear this pastime, then you will get purified, this will happen, that will happen, all these things are given. Now, these things are put there by Vyasadeva to encourage us, to have the interest to follow, to hear, to practice, and so on. But as a bhakta, that is not the objective by which we follow this process. So Rupa Goswami has taught us that Anyabhilashada Shunyam. So the process of bhakti is not supposed to be performed with the intention of getting the Falashruti. Right? So in the first canto, second chapter, fifth verse, Rupa Goswami says, Savai punsam paro dharmo eto bhakti radhokshaje ahaituki apratiyata yatma suprasidati. So to completely satisfy the self, the soul, one has to perform uninterrupted and unmotivated bhakti to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So, as practitioners of Lord Chaitanya's movement, Srila Prabhupada has taught us that we practice bhakti not with the objective of getting something in return, but to please the Lord. Now, consequently or incidentally, some of these other things happen, that's okay. But that is not the objective. So These Falashruti should not be taken too seriously by sadhakas, meaning that we are not practicing bhakti in order to get the Falashruti. Right? It's not that it's incorrect. It's absolutely true, and it's happening. But as a devotee, we don't really actually fixate on that point so much. Meaning that exactly the mechanics of how all this 21 generations are purified and so on. See, the mercy is going to be given because we practice devotional service. Our extended families and so on have the opportunity to get the mercy, but they also have to receive it. Right? So it's not a passive process. It's a process where opportunity is given. And then if they do not take advantage of the opportunity, then it is not some automatic thing that happens and everybody gets liberated. So there's an opportunity that's given. Just like if you are educated yourself, then you most likely will give the opportunity to your next generation, to your kids, to be educated. You will stress the value of getting an education, making sure you're not an ignorant fool, you're learned, you understand things the way they are, you become a good person. You emphasize those things. Now the next generation may decide not to follow, and they may become vagabonds and completely useless. But that is a specific choice that they make. That's their free will. The fact that you're giving them good counsel doesn't give you the ability to also force them to accept that good counsel. Similarly, when we give the opportunity for others to hear Harinam, they can take advantage of the opportunity or they can ignore it. Similarly, when the ability of a devotee to purify 3 generations forefathers, they've given the opportunity for that purification. But as the souls having free will, they may or may not decide to accept it. So anyway, there are so many intricacies, and it gets into the realm of speculation a little bit. But the main point is that when we become a devotee of the Lord, then there's an opportunity for people around us and people in many generations above us to get the benefit of our devotional service. And that's the fundamental point. So the specific mechanics of 21 versus what happens at the 22nd, what about the 19th? Those are all like specific. Sometimes these points are also made as a point that like 21 generations are purified. Now, is it exactly 21? What about the 22nd? Are they not getting it purified? Those are all like the mechanics which are beyond our ability to actually analyze or argue in that way. But the general point is that when you become a devotee of the Lord, then you give the people around you and generations above you the opportunity to get purified. Let's not fixate on the 21 number as like, if you happen to be 21, you're great. If you happen to be the 22nd, then you are out of luck. That's not the specific emphasis here. The emphasis is not on the number 21. The emphasis is really on the point that if you become a devotee of the Lord, then generations above you become purified. That's how I've been taught to understand this point specifically, that it's not the fixation on the number 21, but the general philosophical point. Is that okay?
Yes, thank you, Prabhu.
We'll stop here. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
JP Prabhu, still there?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Yeah, in connection with this point about the various benedictions offered in Shastra and by various acharyas, including Vyasadeva, the one of the important takeaways, the benedictions certainly can serve as incentive for some, and so there's some value in that. It should not be the prime motivation, but in the beginning, of someone's spiritual progression, it may serve as incentive to practice. But an important takeaway is to understand from benedictions like this that it means that you don't have to divert your attention to practices aimed at benefiting family members, because a devotee naturally will have compassion for their family members, their forefathers, and so on. They will be concerned for them, and there are practices prescribed in Vedic literature for means to benefit such individuals. There are all kinds of practices, sacrifices, offerings, and so on that can be performed for the benefit of others. But the important takeaway for Vaishnavas particularly is that we don't have to waste time or divert our attention to any of these various means, that by the single stroke of devotional service, everything is accomplished automatically. We can give ourselves heart and soul, cent per cent, to the devotional service of Krishna, and be assured that every other objective, every other goal, every other desirable thing is automatically achieved without any separate endeavor. So we can be single-pointed in our determination. We don't have to divert our attention to any other thought or activity. So that's one of the important benefits. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much, Prabhu. Yeah. So yeah, that helps. Hare Krishna.